you're going to have a very genuine conversation with yourself about your relationship with feedback. Feedback is meant to grow you. It's not meant to tear you down. It's not meant to put you in a place or anything of that nature.
Produced by Podcast Architects.
Welcome back to another episode of The Path Forward. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Rick Fernandez, where we talk education, innovation, and the merging of the two. Joined today by a very special guest, Edgewood ISD Superintendent Dr. Eduardo Hernandez, coming to us, and one of our Talus board members. So it is a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm good, Dr. Fernandez. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I've wanted to have you on for quite some time. As we spoke on the phone, I have a passion for Edgewood ISD and all the history that it brings to our education system. But first, I want you to share a little bit about your career path, the things you've done in education, where you've been, and some of the districts you've helped lead.
Sure thing. So I am actually in year 26 of my service in public ed. I started back in 1998 as a bilingual teacher, kid coming out of college in the Dallas Independent School District. I'm actually a product of that district. So went directly into the district and began as a bilingual teacher, then became a math teacher, and just kind of did that for those first few years. Then there was a great opportunity that I was given through a leadership, I think it was called Dallas Team One development program. And because of some really great mentors who I still count on today, I was given an opportunity to be prepared for a principalship. So kind of went from principalship, elementary, middle, high school, executive director in central office, moved on after a while, got another great piece of advice. You might want to leave Dallas and go learn what it's like to be in another district and learn that system from the foundation up. And so I ended up out in Crowley ISD, which is in Fort Worth, if you're familiar with that. Then Duncanville ISD, and then here in Edgewood. And I am just closing my 6th year as superintendent and starting my 7th year here in the fall.
Well, 6 years for a superintendent, most people in education know that's a very long time, especially for our state nowadays with some of the turmoil and just some of the things that are happening around the country in education. When did you know you wanted to be an educator? Is there some point where you're like, all right, I know I'm here to serve kids?
You know, there's 3 people that I can remember in my formidable years that 2 that are going to come to my mind very easy. One that I never made that connection until I became a principal. My first principal in elementary school, Miguel Ramos. The gentleman was probably older in life when I met him, and I was only a 5 or 6-year-old. Something about him just stuck to me. I wanted to dress like him. I wanted to wear a suit. He happened to look like me. And I wanted to just grow up and be that kind of a man. And I didn't make that connection until later in life. And then through the school system, 2 great teachers that I actually are part of my story, and I tell it wherever I go. Miss Malowick, my high school English teacher, who took me out of a reading improvement class and put me in an honors class just because she heard me read something because she was subbing in my class. And then, of course, Miss Sharon Ross, who was my math teacher in 3rd grade, who, for some reason, she could see something in the eyes because I'm still friends with her. Miss Malowick passed on, but Miss Ross is still with us, and she says, you know, I still see the eyes when I see you today, and there was something about your 8-year-old set of eyes that told me this kid doesn't take no for an answer, and I didn't. I was a little smart mouth little kid, and so she just took a liking to me, and I particularly liked her too. And so we're still in each other's lives because she checks on me a lot. And so I think it was those 3 people in the early years that I decided I wanted to give back, knowing that I was growing up in a part of Dallas where something didn't seem right, but I was too young to know what it was. But I had people that said, you're a lot smarter than you think you are, and we're going to teach you how to do that. And so that's where I decided I want to be a leader in education.
So I got to ask, because a teacher took you out of reading improvement and put you into the honors class. Like, can you think back as to how you felt as a student and your reaction, and then what your first kind of thoughts were?
My first thought was, she was like, "Why are you in this class?" And I said, "Well, they gave me a schedule and I just follow it. That's typically how you do it, right?" And she was actually subbing in that class because there wasn't a teacher. So that particular period, she was there. And I remember the book that she gave me. She gave me the Scarlet Letter. Now I know what that book is all about now. And so she gave it to me and she asked me to read for 10 minutes. She said, "Can you tell me what you just read?" And I did. I talked about the power of symbolism and how that whole book was about symbolism. And so for a kid who wasn't even reading on 40th percentile, because I remember the conversation between her and my counselor, "Hey, this kid doesn't even read on the 40th percentile on the ITBS test." I remember that conversation. Um, my own counselor wouldn't move me from that class, but the counselor next door, and I didn't use her name, but Miss Rala, her name is Charmaine Rala, I still remember her name, said, "It's okay, baby, I'll move you. If the teacher wants you, I'll move you." And so I was moved, and I did fine. It was a freshman advanced placement class. That turned into taking advanced placement history, the math, the science, and quite frankly, that really, she really changed my life. Everybody had a lot to do with me, but Miss Malowick really just changed my life.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I have a very similar story of a first grade teacher pulling me out of my shell and moving me and sitting me with the smart kids, right? Like
Right.
I didn't have any idea, but I believed her. She was my teacher. And then all of a sudden, I believed I was smart just for the simple fact that she moved me from one table to another and got me to believe in myself, right? There was no different groups at that time. So I was just sitting with a different group of kids, but it made me feel and think and believe that I had potential beyond what I was currently doing. So that's an awesome story. And I love hearing those stories because it just reminds me of why we do what we do. You know, when you think about Edgewood, very rich history, and I think it's fair to say it's had its ups and downs. But for those that may not know the history behind Edgewood ISD, can you share a little bit of what you knew, but also what you know now as the leader?
So what I knew was what I learned in my master's level courses, which I think was most people remember, the Edgewood versus Kirby case, is what ultimately had a huge influence on what we now call, lovingly, if you will, the Robin Hood equalization plan in terms of financing our schools. That's really what most people remember on the surface. That when I was one of those people, what I've come to learn over the years that's valuable about the example in Edgewood is that there's a social justice DNA, which is a word that I've sort of been repetitive with since I came here. It is so in our DNA here. When you think about the 60s and the walkouts that happened here in this district, a lot of what made into the history books were the walkouts that were happening in down in the valley, here near Eagle Pass, those places, Crystal City, Texas. That's the one I was trying to remember. Those original walkouts. A lot of people didn't realize that there were kids walking out in San Antonio. Most folks think San Antonio is one big district. That's San Antonio ISD, right? But we know there's 17 districts here. Edgewood is one of the medium to smaller ones. But this was the first group of kids who walked out to say that we see that we're not funded equally. We see that there is disparity in our schools. We don't have teachers that believe in us. We don't have counselors. We don't even have programs that we can use. Back then it was vocational ed. So the kids made a decision and just walked out and did that for a few days. And so that DNA has been part of the district that started even before the 60s. A lot of people don't realize a lot of the original social activists here in San Antonio were on the west side, and they were mostly women. Emma Tenayuca, who was one of the first walkout folks around the Pecan rebellion here in San Antonio. This was before even Cesar Chavez, if you will. Young woman in her late teens started a protest, walked out, and there's about 6 or 7 women that are on one of our schools. There's a mural of these 7 women who were at the head of walkout social movements in the 40s and 50s that really most people will never know who they are, but they ignited a whole generation of kids in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, which ultimately led to the Edgewood versus Kirby case. And so there is a DNA here that people just don't automatically accept what you tell them. They're going to fight back with you. That can be good and bad, right?
I was about to say, I'm sure you got some stories on the other end of that.
Be good and bad, but I will tell you there are some very genuine people who, at the end of the day, want the same thing the rest of us want for our kids. They want access to
Yeah.
that American dream they've been told about. They feel the community feels like we've made a huge sacrifice in our community. You know, a lot of people don't realize Edgewood lost the most number of boys during the Vietnam War out of any one particular zip code.
Oh, wow.
A huge mural in our stadium here that we give homage to at every game. We're actually going to have a ceremony here on Monday. But that's another huge part of the DNA of the district, the amount of young men and women who have gone on and served their country and made the ultimate sacrifice. And I'll tell you, as a young Mexicano kid growing up in Dallas, I thought I never knew Mexicanos were in the war. I never saw us. Everybody I saw did not look like me. So to come here and then to be now sitting at a table across from men and women who have some very interesting stories, that's the things that we may not hear in our history books, that we may not hear in our just our folklore and our stories. And so that gives me a lot of pride for as a Mexican American man, but also as the leader of young men and women who now can have something they can share and pass on to their family. So I think that's what Edgewood's all about.
Man, I had no idea. And my dad's a veteran, my uncle's a veteran, both from San Antonio. And they don't even know that, I would guess. I shouldn't speak for them, but I don't believe they've never mentioned it. And they, trust me, they love their San Antonio history. So that's amazing that in that community, all of the folks that died for our country. That kind of leads me to my next question. As you're a new administrator coming up through the ranks, you're taking a look around, you're going to make your first move or your second move. So as you're doing that, how did you land on Edgewood? What about the district or the community drew you in? Because before you, I don't think it's any secret, there was some struggles, right? So it probably wasn't from the outside a very appealing superintendency, but how did you make it your own and put your own leadership spin on it?
So I spent many years working and preparing and looking for mentors that would guide me towards my ultimate goal of serving as a superintendent. On a personal level, I prayed about it for a long time. And I said, I want to serve in a community where I can serve young people who not necessarily, I didn't necessarily say it because of my ethnicity, but I want to serve kids that are poor and grew up poor like I did. Folks that are going to need an advocate, and that not to say that I'm the ultimate advocate for anybody, but that I can be one of multiple advocates, surround myself with folks that believe in the same thing, and then work towards common goals, taking very small steps each day. And so to your point, yeah, the district has had a lot of turmoil. And, I always say that it's important because what I tell people is when we get to the climax and the top of where we want to get to that mountain we talk about, while we're climbing up, let's also own the history. And the history comes with some disadvantages or some setbacks and challenges. The state has taken over here 3 times. I was brought in by a board of managers after the board of trustees was removed because they couldn't govern together. And so that to me I've always been attracted to places that have need a level of structure, a level of going and doing very grassroots work. I was brought up in the church. We did a lot of grassroots work in the community. So I knew there was going to be an opportunity to serve here and actually just get out into the neighborhoods. And so that was one of the reasons that drew me. The other part was I was young. I wanted my first shot. I wanted to go in and just, hey, look, this is me. I don't have all the answers, but I hope you'll meet me in the middle. And so I'd like to think 6 years later, at least half of everybody met me in the middle. The board transitioned back to a fully elected board. We don't have state control anymore. And that also gave me some indication of where we needed to put our focus, which was on 3 things: teacher quality, principal quality or leadership quality, and the quality of our governance. If we could get those 3 things collectively, we could work on those things and we could invest in people that were here, and also you need new blood, then we were going to be able to make some dent into the work here. And, when I came in, all but 1 school, all the other 19 were an F.
Yep.
We had 1 school that was a C. That was it. And it was hanging on to that C, right? And so, again, the governance has changed. We have principals that go through some very quality programming in the district, but we also work with places like the Holsworth Center out of HEB, the Relay Center, different in leadership development groups that really just take and develop a bench of ready leaders. And so I think that's had a huge effect and impact on not just the academic outcomes financially in the district. Districts are also a business. Financially, we've done much better. We now have all sorts of superior ratings and awards with accounting. There was a lot of issues before. And so I want to thank our team, because it took them believing in a mission that we really get so focused on the work that we've been out of the news. That's what I heard the first 2 years. Look, man, I don't know you, but I haven't seen y'all in the news, so you must be doing something right.
You're absolutely right. It has been almost too low key, and one of the reasons I was like, look, you guys, you and the team are not getting enough credit because you haven't had a peep from anything, which means kids are getting what they need and staff is getting what they need. So kind of brings me back to what you hit on a little bit about focus. Coming in 2018, how did you know where to start? I mean, how did you kind of distill it down to like, all right, I know these three things, we've got to really just set our nose to the grindstone and get after it?
It's been a combination of a few things. There's research. I mean, I'm a man who reads a lot. The research shows you that the two biggest factors in children's academic outcomes are teachers and leaders, which in this case is principals. The governance was the obvious one, because obviously we could not handle the business of the district if the governing body was going to not be focused on the work of the students. And so that was one part of why I decided to go down that route. The other part was the mentorship around me. I've always been a firm believer that mentorship is a key to going from a good leader to a great leader. And so I relied on great leaders that I've learned from, Dr. Mike Hinojosa in Dallas ISD, Dr. Mike Moses from Dallas ISD, my former boss in Duncanville, Dr. Mark Smith, and really just speaking to them about what was working where we were. What did they learn? What were some lived experiences? They were first-time superintendents at some point. And then just quality leaders that I learned from when I was a principal, people that I've kept in, my circle, and then just coming in and focusing on the cabinet, the superintendent's cabinet. I only lost one person. I still have the same team.
Really?
So, the same team. I've only lost one person because she moved on to another role. But everybody else is still here. I've had one actually there's two. The other one's now a superintendent. She's a superintendent Donna ISD, Angela Dominguez. And so it's been like that because I think we really focus on investing in one another, growing one another. We don't shy away from challenges. In fact, sometimes I always tell them, we're going to get on each other's nerves. We're going to step on each other's toes, and we're going to get angry at each other. That's okay. Just walk back and make sure you clean that up, and we'll just move on. And so it's been work that's good. It's corazon work. It's heart work. And our community, honestly, you can't reach our community if you don't show a level of humility that comes from a place of knowing what it feels like not to have and being left out. And I think most of us can understand that, being left out, especially the being left out part, right? People don't want to be left out. And so just including them in conversations and a simple please and thank you. And it's an honor to serve your child. And, I use the word serve and support a lot, has really just changed people's focus of, hey, you know what? I think you guys are onto something. I'll at least sit here long enough to hear you out. And even when we disagree, I won't automatically go into using other language. I'll wait. So it's been pretty cool. I mean, we have a really genuine group of people here.
That's awesome. I had no idea that your team was mostly from the original group. That's unheard of. Even when things are going fantastically, not to mention having to build slowly and really get the district in the place that you want it. Thinking back to when you first got there, was there a moment where you were thinking, man, did I make a mistake? Was there really one challenging point during that first year that you can kind of reflect on and kind of take us through what happened in your thought process?
I think the first time where I had maybe a little bit of pause was when we decided to go into the innovation cycle. And I think that came because obviously when you're up against the wall, you've got to get some quick wins in. And making quick wins up front, that low-hanging fruit doesn't always come without some casualty of the work, right? And so there was some times where I felt very alone. I mean, I think most leaders have felt that. I felt that I needed to make some decisions that, one great piece of advice I got before the job was, you'll find out the first 6 months how hard it is to be a superintendent, because you're going to have to make some decisions that may cost you not being there anymore. And so I always guide my decisions by three things. How much impact can we make with this decision? How much can we scale it, the scalability of the decision, and the sustainability of it? And so what I refused to do when I got here was to just give a whim answer of yes to everything. And so there were times where I would say no to folks who wanted to partner with us, and I would say, we're not ready for you at this time. And of course, that had consequences that I was unaware. First time superintendent. Well, I'm going to call such and such because we've always been in the district and we're going to be in the district. And so it caused there's some political backlash there, right?
Sure.
And really, there was that time of just helping people understand that we may not get the gratification in decisions today, but we're building for tomorrow. We're planting seeds for a tree that we won't enjoy that shade until years from now.
Right.
And that wasn't the case. We live in a world where we want an immediate gratification to everything. And so that has taken some time to develop. I'm not a person who overly reacts to anything. I'm very collective about things. And I think also sometimes people have felt like, well, do you not care about what you're doing because you seem like you don't have a reaction? I say, well, I do have a reaction. My reaction is to choose not to respond because I don't know all the answers, all the details. I need time to converse with my team, also members of the community, because at that point I met a lot of folks. I was in the neighborhoods a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I followed those things. So there were some times where I felt like maybe they want me to move faster than I'm willing to move. And that we're building for the long term. And you're right, I may not be here for that. But I knew coming in that some of the work that we start today, we may not enjoy. You're building for the future of children. And it doesn't matter. I'm not here to get credit for anything. I'm here to make sure that 5 or 6 years from now, somebody doesn't have to start over and build another bridge and another bridge. There's already some infrastructure there that they can come and they may have better ideas or enhancement ideas, but the continuity is there. And one big thing that I've learned here is people are so tired, they have change fatigue. We're constantly changing. So try to just keep it very simple, work on a few things each year, go in depth. And it was that desire of people in me to move faster that I said, no, we're not going to move faster. We're going to take our time.
I love it. So you've been 6 years in Edgewood ISD. So far, what's your greatest victory or the greatest victory for the district?
The first victory is for the kids. We have a lot more students now that are actually not just taking advanced policeman courses, but they're actually doing well in them. We have more students that are attaining their associate's degree before they're attaining their high school diploma. We have more students that are getting industry certifications than they were in the past, whether it's in culinary arts, criminal justice, cosmetology, or in the automotive tech, phlebotomy, health sciences. I mean, I can go on and on. We have more kids that are going through that programming. We have more innovative programming for our schools. We now have leadership schools for boys and girls that went from K-5 to K-8 at the request of parents because they wanted to sort of eliminate that middle school transition. We have visual and performing arts schools. So what I'm speaking to is choice. We have a lot more choice for neighborhood kids that in the past they might have had to go to other places that they perceive they're to have options and choices. And so I got that a lot from my interviewing with parents and members of the community, and internal and external, that I work here because I'm proud of Edgewood. I know we've had a lot of, their words, not mine, we've had a lot of drama sometimes. People have not made the best choices, but I work here because I love my neighborhoods. I don't see what other people see. And so really honoring those requests and really just earning the respect of people to be able to go to places where they normally wouldn't invite us. We have I'm proud of the platicas that we have in the neighborhoods because we end up in people's backyards, people's porticos, people's front yards, people's carne asadas. And again, I'm a huge grassroots guy. I was brought up that way, preaching in church when I was a little kid. And so really being in spaces where people are the most comfortable has really, I think, given me an opportunity just to start a conversation. And they haven't always been positive. I've had conversations where I get yelled at. And again, I'm pretty calm about it. I said, you have every right to be upset. I think think you're getting upset at me because I'm the person in the seat. I get it. But yelling does not help underserved communities. And we're an underserved community. If we keep doing that, we're just perpetuating that.
Right.
So most people have jumped on the bandwagon to support. Of course, some are like, wow, when is, we want to move faster. So I get it. But are we building just to win today, or are we building to win for the long term over and over so it's consistent? And your grandkids get to benefit from this, not just your kids you have today. And so those are things I'm proud of. I'm proud of our board. The board has really, they went from board of managers, they won their own elected seats. They're very comfortable now going out to different conferences and presenting on the story, the Edgewood story. So the board gets up and presents. They've gotten, they got the HEB Excellence Award for top school board semifinalists last year. So there's a lot of awards that the board, I don't even think they imagined they could achieve. And it's because we've just focused back on what is more important, which is the kids in our neighborhoods, and just really focused on that. Keep your head down and just keep working. I mean, really, we're too busy to get involved in anything else. So I'm really proud of that, and just the numbers of principals that we've been able to grow that are former Edgewood graduates that have grown in the district now, and they're serving the community in a way that only a graduate of our neighborhoods can serve here.
A lot of school districts and schools struggle with bringing parents in, right? Like you're always talking about, well, if they don't feel comfortable here, we need to go to them to where they feel comfortable. It sounds like you've been able to create kind of the home field advantage at the school within the community. So they feel comfortable to, like you said, to voice their displeasure sometimes, but almost this feeling that their school is their home, which is what we always want, right? We want them to feel like we're part of their community, embedded in the community and serving the community. So, that's an unbelievable accomplishment in itself, because that's a difficult challenge, particularly when you're coming from underserved communities in turmoil for quite some time. So that's just an unbelievable job by you guys, your team, and your staff and your board. So, I'm just astounded, because I knew that y'all were doing great things, but like to hear it, it's really put it in perspective. And I think y'all need to get out there and share that story a little bit more, because some people need to hear this, man. This is very powerful. And for some of us old school people that understand the history and the complexity, it's a testament to what can be done if you have the right leader and you have the right why and you have the right people moving in the same directions. I do want to hit on innovation, because one thing struck me the first time we met. You said you were unapologetic about providing innovative opportunities, particularly for your female students. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done in the district for your female students?
Sure. I'll tell you where that starts with me. I talked a little bit about how I was raised in the church. I went to a church where our pastors were women. They were my aunts. They were my mom. One of my aunts was a missionary. She went to Mexico, and I actually got to go with her a few times. And so I've always seen women in a position of authority in terms of just leading a church. A church is maybe not as big as a school district, but it is people trusting you to lead them. And so my scope was developing women in a way that I read a book a long time ago that says, when you educate a woman, you educate a family. And so knowing that when the mother is well educated or educated in life, then the children in the family have a much better chance of really reaching the ultimate goal that they may have personally and then as a family. And so that's really where I start from in terms of why I am so oriented to serving my female students. Our male students are going to get a lot of attention because this society is built for us as men. There's a lot of male perspectives that were involved. And so I try to make my contribution by creating spaces where our young women can thrive intentionally. And so to that effect, we have the K-8 Las Palmas Leadership School for Girls. It is an international baccalaureate program. We're actually going through candidacy right now. Our girls ultimately will graduate and get a world diploma. And so this is a space that now my original girls that started in second grade, they're in seventh grade now. And every time I go to that school, it feels like, I feel like I used to when I was a principal in Dallas. The kids know me. I know them very well. And that's not to say that I don't love my other kids, This is just a unique place where I love to hear that they don't have to hold back and show that they're smart. Because I'd hear from girls, well, you know, I don't want to do that because such is in the room,
Yeah.
or I don't want him to think I'm a nerd, blah, blah, blah. And I know guys, we go through that same thing too. We just don't voice it as much. But again, this is a place where they have an opportunity and to go into other programs, welding, criminal justice, automotive tech. By the same token, I have a lot more boys now that are in the cosmetology program because I'm adamant about breaking down these barriers that people think you have to fit into a certain mold. I never fit into a mold. And so I use my platform in that way, and I use the power of this role and just to create the spaces. Of course, talk to my team, talk to my board. We have a lot of homes. Statistically, we have a lot of homes in Edgewood that are led by women, and so it's no mistake that the pláticas are led in someone's house. And I say in Spanish, you know, I grew up saying everybody knew la doña of the neighborhood. Everybody would go to La Doña for help. Hey, I don't have diapers. I don't have food. There was always that one lady in the neighborhood who everybody could go to. So I follow that same model to get into these homes because if I can do good with that one person, then chances are I'm going to do well with other people who may not trust me enough to even listen to me. But if she says, hey, let's listen to him, that's a good start.
Okay, so I've got to ask you this. So if you sound like you had some great female role models in the family, but in the church, what happened when you misbehaved as a student or just around the house? How did they handle that? Just out of curiosity.
So I had a lot of people come at me, to be perfectly honest. I was one of those kids who I questioned everything, even my faith growing up. I would always ask for proof. And so really a lot of my getting in trouble was that. You know, ask a lot of questions and just don't accept this is the way it's supposed to be. Well, you know, I push back. But I would get everything from scripture, big part of why you shouldn't act a certain way. I think the older that I got and the more that I was able to make logic of the world that I was trying to understand, especially as a first generation Mexicano, really trying to coalesce those Mexican values to the American values and all of that. There was still the foundation of the church. And for me, I don't necessarily bring up scripture. It's more of service.
Sure.
My family never lost focus on service is more important than anything else because we were given opportunities, even though we originally came over because of my grandmother in the 40s, because out of poverty, quite frankly. She was given a lot of aid. She taught us to love this country because it helped her, no questions asked. Now, I know a lot of history now, and I know there was a lot going on in the 40s, you know, that maybe might contradict some of that. But if the matriarch of the family felt that this country extended its hand and that it gave her the help she needed when she came here alone and left the family back. So most times the dad goes first. She came and found a place for my aunts, my mom, and I learned that. And so I am very respectful, and I love our country. And I know that my piece of that puzzle for the family is to now create spaces for young women who will someday also they maybe end up being leaders in their family. And that just creates a better space for children that are educated. And it teaches them not just academics, it teaches them survival skills. And we know survival skills. Sometimes kids aren't street smart. They need to be street smart in the world we're living in.
No doubt. I mean, to me, that's one of the most important skills is just being aware of what's around you and how to interact and what to do and when to not do it. You've been in Edgewood for 6 years. In that time frame, how has the role of superintendent changed? I got to imagine it is remarkably different from 2018 to where you sit now.
You know, I think the biggest change, which has been, it's easy for me to cite this because it's been my stretching point and that I've had to develop, and I've elicited coaches to help me with this. The level of advocacy that we've had to now take on at the legislative level has grown tremendously since 2018. Now we're still doing the everyday things of making sure that the business runs, making sure that we're paying our bills, making sure that buses are running, making sure that we have a high quality teacher in every classroom, that we're developing them, leadership. All of that is extremely important. But we're also having to make sure that we are getting out and using this platform to make sure that people understand that public ed matters and telling your story as a school district, making sure that, you know, we started with a campaign of first, let's talk about our why, hashtag our why. That was the whole first year. The second year was tell your story, Edgewood. That was year 2 here. Year 3 was be intentional. Be intentional about what you're going to share, because understand that our district will get judged on what we share. And sharing means also what we put out in social media and all of those different events, the outcomes of our students, how we compete athletically, academically, when you go to conferences. So it's always been about enhancing our ability to share our story. For the superintendent, it's been getting in front of the legislative sessions. We have a great delegation in Bexar County in terms of the support of public schools, but that isn't enough either. As a superintendent, I know I've had to grow in the sense of going to talk to elected officials who do not agree with public ed.
Right.
It's always easy to go with those who support you, but you're really getting in front of those who, quite frankly, are opposed to what you believe in. And so really for me, it's just been growing my ability to speak, being aware and self-aware, even in rooms where I might get a little bit of an attack on me. That's okay. But really finding some middle ground that I may not convince you, and that's not the goal. The goal is to share with you how we are fiscally doing the right thing for our students, how we are providing choice. Here are the examples, and here's a few things that I'd like you to go away with. That's simple. So the advocacy piece has changed at the legislative session, but I think now also, and I've seen this since the pandemic, is going back and reminding our parents why our schools, our local schools, are still important. The world did change a lot since the pandemic, and not just what you see, but also the social emotional health of people. Tolerance, people are less tolerant, and really reminding parents, students, kindness still matters. Agency, awareness matters. There's a place in Edgewood for every kind of student. We serve all kinds of students that you can think in your mind right now. We have some very unique spaces in Edgewood for students that don't fit the traditional mold of students. And we embrace them. We bring them. We actually talk about them all the time. And I've got kids that come from New Braunfels, Castroville, because they don't fit in. And that's nothing against those communities. My respect for those communities. The child's perception in the family is that they don't fit there. They fit here. And so we welcome them with open arms and work hard to put the right leadership in those schools to say, I need a leader there that's open-minded and that will embrace children and serve them, because they're somebody's kid, and I would want the same thing for my kid. That's how I roll.
What's the advice that you give to new leaders as they're coming in, whether it's the superintendency or as a principal, as an assistant principal? I feel like some of the advice that I may have given in the past probably doesn't hold water now, if I think back on it. So what are some of the things that you have to advise or not advise for your new leaders?
So I think the first thing, because I think it's a skill that will help you in what you do, is stay coachable in every situation that you're in. Know that developing yourself as a leader starts with you're going to have a very genuine conversation with yourself about your relationship with feedback. Feedback is meant to grow you. It's not meant to tear you down. It's not meant to put you in a place or anything of that nature. But to be a quality leader, you have to be open to feedback. You have to be open to being coachable. One of the things that I do push now since the pandemic is we've got to also help our people maintain some life-work balance. We are burning people out, and the system is not going to. We still have the same needs that we've had many years. They're exacerbated right now because of post-pandemic. But I do try to remind our folks, when you have important things going on, your kids starting kindergarten, or your parents, or it's an anniversary weekend for you and your spouse, or it's your child's play or baseball game. You have leaders you can talk to and say, I need to attend this. Those are things that are spiritual enhancers, I call them. They're mental uplifters. You can't serve other people if you don't take care of yourself at the same time. Now, does that mean, Dr. H, I'm not responsible for all the other things I have? That's not what I said. You have a team around you. So really understand team and learn to talk about the things that matter to one another, so you can jump in and help each other out. We do it in where I'm at. And it's important because, again, the needs of our community are just building, but I need you to take care of your family, because to not do that means that you're not able to serve children who need as much attention as yours do. And so those are 3 things that I coach my folks to remember in the role of a leader. And this is the last one's a personal one of mine. Be okay to be vulnerable. I tell people my story. the story of growing up with not much. I have a personal story about abuse myself. I'm not ashamed to share that. I am a survivor of that. I've shared it many times in convocations. And I'm at an age now where it's one of the stones that I used to climb up on to build myself. And that is, I realize now that that's why I'm a superintendent. The platform that I have allows me to share so that a lot of other kids that are out there and families going through what I did as a little kid, and nobody will talk about. Well, I'll talk about it. I will talk about it because I know that what it does is that it uplifts. I've done it in places where I've seen grown men tell me, I've never told anybody that happened to me. And you do that in such a free way. I said, I do it because I made my peace with it. And I do it because I serve children who need and wonder, does anybody know what this feels like? Does anybody know I'm drowning? Does anybody know? And so I use my platform in a way to edify and speak life into other people because I had people that did it for me when I was drowning. And I'm still here, and I'm very grateful that I get to be maybe somebody's role model to say maybe I can be like that bald guy that's the superintendent, and can now talk about those things and not be ashamed, because I feel no shame. I feel no shame, not anymore.
So
And so
I love the adversity and then harnessing it, right? That's the hardest part, is like you said, to move past it and come to terms and then harness it for your own personal growth. What part of your experiences, when you accepted the job, were there anything there that's like, you know what, because I've been through some fires, I want the personal challenge, to see if I can go conquer this and help kids conquer whatever challenges. Is there any of that when you were looking at the job that kind of motivated you?
this was one. That's why I waited to the end. I read, because the conversation.
Yeah.
This is why I waited to the end. This was the one that doesn't show up on the transcript, but that because we do have an internet world that we can look up statistics. I know the number of incidences in my zip codes, and it is crazy, the number. And so that was a huge draw for me, because my own child knows it, my parents know it. I know what it takes to come out of that, and I wanted to serve in a place where I could do some things. And we now have social emotional counselors they're not the credit crunching counselors. They work specifically to work with kids on guidance and counseling and strategies. We have social workers in elementary schools. We do those things very intentionally, because when you and your family are stuck in that place, you don't know where to go. And that's even before we talk about language and anything else. And the shame is the worst thing. But over the years, I have become, there's a time and a place for everything. And I think that has also endeared me to the community in a way that I understand. I mean, quite frankly, I just understand, and that doesn't make me any better. It just gives me a little bit of insight, and I can, to some extent, I've spotted a few folks, and the kids will tell me, "Yep." And so that to me is an honor, to get to serve in a place. And of course, unfortunately, we live in a society where kids that are going through this are everywhere. I just know I'm trying to make a change in my 16 square miles of San Antonio. That's how big Edgewood is. I'm just trying to be a difference in my 16 square miles and serve and support my kids in the best way that I was designed to do every day. And that's why you have innovation. That's why the clarity to know the things in the beginning. We had to focus on teacher, principal quality, governance quality, and really just go grassroots and go where people feel the most comfortable, which is their homes, their parks, their yards, their backyards, and remove just the barrier, because it's easy to point out what people don't do, but just go. I mean, it goes a long way with people who feel left out. Just go and be there in my space with me.
Yeah.
To me, that's a big deal.
I love it. We've got about a couple of minutes left. I want to pick your brain. These are topics just that I've had with other superintendents, just kind of random as education continues to evolve, and just get your take. So totally non-scripted stuff here. Conversations I've been having was, how do we, and you said it earlier, we have to think of school districts like businesses, because there's a large business component to the work. What could we or should we monetize in order to help recoup some of our funding struggles? Is there anything that you've thought about or seen? It's like, you know what, we probably need to leverage these type of assets more and bring in some funding to help, offset some of those gaps?
So I'm going to speak to the funding sources that I know of right now, but I
Sure.
think the manner in which we fund schools is definitely something that we need to look at. And I'm talking about enrollment versus attendance. Um, the way that we're set up does not benefit us because even if a child's not in school every day, we're still required to educate them at the level of schooling that they're at. The funding doesn't match it. I think we could maximize more of apprenticeship learning if we were able to invest more money into career and technology programs that start much earlier than high school. There are middle school kids who are able to do everything from animation to a lot of that health science certification as early as I think sixth grade.
I agree.
And really just investing in those earlier years because that's when they decide what they want to do. And so more hands-on and really just matching the needs of the state. I'm not even asking for these made up careers. No, what does the state of Texas that is growing, that is a robust economy, that is an aging population too, what are we going to need? What are the jobs of the future? And then in some contexts, cities like San Antonio and Houston and Dallas and Austin, you have these huge network players. Like, for example, where we are, we have the Port of San Antonio, which has Boeing, which has different groups here that are looking for the workers of the future. And so a lot more leverage is it's accumulated by us for the students in terms of certifications when we can partner easily, when we don't have so many challenges to do that, when we have the money to create the facilities that we can teach that work in our schools and then transition the kids out. We do a lot of that work now because of the Port San Antonio being next to us. But we need those transition opportunities for kids that don't need to go to college. They don't want to go. But industry certifications, quite frankly, pay a whole lot more
A whole
than
lot more.
graduating degrees. And so I think those are opportunities we're missing. I think we've got to bring much more focus to the teaching profession
Yeah.
and make it something that people want to do. The pipelines are drying out and we are having a hard time finding folks. And so we're building our own pipelines here. I think a lot of districts are doing that too. But in our context, I'm looking for that person who wants a challenge and they want to teach in a district that is challenged. Because I'd say 8 out of 10 teachers grew up in neighborhoods that were extremely challenged. And so they look for that. And so bringing them back, even if you're not from Edgewood, serving in a neighborhood that is challenging, but that we're able to give them those supports too. There's so much that we ask of our teachers that, quite frankly, it's disheartening because they come in with the heart, the corazons in their hands. And so I want to make sure that they stay with us. And so I think those are good opportunities for us to leverage more support for the system of education, which ultimately creates the democratic society that we all say that we want. And so
Absolutely. Okay, let me throw these. So speaking of teacher retention and recruitment, I have some ideas I've been throwing out there for, because you're really kind of locked into what you can pay. Everybody's roughly the same range, and then you have the same tools, right? Stipends or different things to help supplement. Why can't we do things like some of the corporate world entities do, right? So, for instance, is there any reason we couldn't, provide maybe their favorite subscription service, like if for a family of four, Netflix for their year? We pay that. We work out some type of corporate discount with companies like that. I'm just throwing Netflix out off the top of my head, but it could be any type of service. Staff eats for free, right? Breakfast, lunch, staff eats for free, no charge. We take that concern if they're trying to rush down to the cafeteria or they got to leave campus before they get back to a PLC meeting. Just things like that where we're a little bit outside the box. Should we be thinking more along those lines, in your opinion?
Absolutely, and I think school districts are doing that.
Yep.
I will tell you, there's a few districts around here, including us. We partner up with University Health, and our folks have access to a free clinic. A lot of our folks go on their planning period, or if they have their kids in schools, there's enough time to get them there in and out, because any of our folks that show up, they get first priority. There's also medications that the real basic generic ones that they don't pay for them.
Oh, wow.
Because they work for us as a school district employee. And so I think every district is being as creative as they can. We, through our Senate Bill 1892 partnerships, have been able to also leverage the funding that some of our operator managed schools accrue because it's a partnership. And what they do for us is that if you're a teacher, let's say in early childhood, and you want to get a master's degree, they will meet with Texas A&M San Antonio. They'll have a plan, and it ends up being pretty much free for the teacher. And so there's small drops in the bucket that we've been able to develop over the years that enhance why you should stay with us. Right now we're trying to work on free daycare. And so daycare is expensive.
Let me tell you, yeah.
And so really those smaller perks matter, as well as just doing things like the state of Texas has the teacher incentive allotment. We just awarded our first group of teachers. I've got teachers that are right at the $100,000 mark now.
Oh, nice.
And so those are great incentives. Teacher word of mouth is always the best. They talk about it so much that I've got teachers that left us to other districts, and now they're like, hey, can I come back here if you got an opening? Because the higher your SES, low SES numbers are, the more money you make. And I've got administrators that are now, quite frankly, telling me, Doc, I think I'm going to go back to the classroom because I was a really good teacher. And I know I can make that top exemplary award. And the exemplary award people make in the mid-30s on top of everything else they're making.
Yeah.
So those are the things that we're all trying to do collectively as school districts to make it more, to enhance more people coming in and keep our folks, because a teacher in the classroom longer with serving the same community, that's when people really start trusting that teacher, right?
Yep.
I think all districts are trying to do that.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you for spending some time. I know you guys are just slam busy trying to get school finished up, and to share the Edgewood story, and congratulations to you and your team, your school board, and just the community and the kids, man. It's amazing what you guys are doing out there. And I need to get on San Antonio. Who's down there? KSAT. Y'all need to get a little bit more pub for the great things that y'all are doing. So
just here actually today doing a story on this.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah, they're a little late, but that's all right. Me too. I'm a little late too, so I'll forgive them. But man, thank you so much just for working and being a servant leader, and particularly for a community that has needed it for quite some time. So I just appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doc. I very much appreciate this opportunity to speak to you.
No, absolutely. And for all those that are listening or watching, if you like what you hear and see, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And we'll see you next time on The Path Forward.
Produced by Podcast Architects.